Hey, it's Tom from Texas, and it's time for another floppy deep dive, and we're going to be doing another in the series of Commodore versus Atari. Yep, we're going to be checking out games that start with the letter G. We're going to be looking at 10 games today. All I would say are the most popular games that start with a G. 3 movies pop in my mind that they had games made about: Ghostbusters, Goonies, and Gremlins. So if you love retro computers and you love to see these systems side by side, you've come to the right place. So go ahead, pull up a chair, grab a joystick, and let's get started. Boom. All right, let's start off hacking and slashing our way through the dungeons of Gauntlet. Released in 1985, this game brought the arcade excitement into our living rooms, and it's time to see how it holds up on both the Commodore 64 and the Atari 800XL. Starting with the Commodore 64, the first thing you notice how clean it looks. The graphics are sharp and vibrant, making the dungeon environments and characters stand out. The sound is equally impressive, drawing you into the game and its immersive audio. And an interesting tidbit about this version is the inclusion of the secret level warps, where if you move the wall near the exit on the first level, you'll find that hidden passage that warps you several levels ahead. This immediate action adds a bit of excitement right from the start. Switching over to the Atari 800XL version, the core gameplay remains addictive, but there are some noticeable differences. Graphics, while solid, it's not quite the same as the Commodore 64. Colors are a little bit more muted, and overall, the look just isn't as polished. And the most significant issue is, for me anyway, is the controls. The shooting speed on the Atari is so much slower, and it makes it tough to fend off all those fast approaching ghosts and goblins. And this can make the game feel tougher, and it's not always in a good way. However, the sound on the Atari holds its own, delivering an authentic arcade audio experience. Overall, I'd give this round to the Commodore 64. The cleaner graphics, the ability to start shooting enemies immediately make for a more engaging and enjoyable gaming experience. Plus, those secret level warps add an extra layer of fun. Atari had those too. So, what do you think? Do you agree with my pick, or do you have a different favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's suit up and head over to our next game, Ghostbusters. Strap on your proton packs because it's time to bust some ghosts with Ghostbusters. A beloved classic released in 1984, this game has haunted both the Commodore 64 and the Atari 800XL, and it's time to see how they stack up against each other. Starting with the Commodore 64 version, the graphics truly shine. The Ghostbusters look fantastic and true to their iconic uniforms, unlike the Atari versions where they appear blue and white. What's up with that? The ghosts also look better on the Commodore 64, adding more detail and color to the game. Sound-wise, the Commodore 64 version stands out with more memorable voice samples. When you capture a ghost, the character shouts, "Ghostbusters," and if you miss, you hear, "He slimed me." These touches really enhance the experience. The driving segment plays similar on both systems, maintaining the core of the gameplay. Now, let's talk about the Atari 800XL version. While it retains much of the gameplay that makes Ghostbusters fun, there are some noticeable differences. The most obvious is the color scheme of the Ghostbusters themselves. They appear blue and white, which can be a bit jarring if you're used to the more accurate uniforms on the Commodore 64. The sound also falls short without the iconic voice samples. However, the controls are very similar, making it easy to switch between versions. Overall, I definitely give this one to the Commodore 64. The superior graphics and sound make for a more immersive and enjoyable experience, and those additional voice samples really add to the game's charm and authenticity. What's your take? Do you agree with my pick, or do you have a different favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's go on an adventure with our next game, Goonies. Alright, treasure hunters, let's delve into Goonies, another gem from Datasoft released in 1985. This game's based on the iconic movie, and both the Commodore 64 and the Atari 800XL versions deliver an excellent adaptation. In terms of graphics, Datasoft did a stellar job on both systems. The visuals are colorful and detailed, capturing the adventurous spirit of the Goonies. Whether you're navigating through the caverns, dodging traps, or outsmarting the tellies. Graphics look sharp and vibrant on both platforms. When it comes to sound, it's a close race. Both versions feature memorable tunes and sound effects that really bring the game to life. The music is catchy and true to the movie, adding to the overall immersive experience. There's no difference between the two, making it hard to pick a favorite based solely on sound. And as for gameplay, Datasoft ensured the experience remained consistent across both systems. The controls are smooth and responsive, making it easy to guide Mikey and the gang through the various levels. The puzzles are engaging and the platforming elements are challenging yet fair. Whether you're playing on the Commodore 64 or the Atari 800XL, the gameplay feels identical and equally enjoyable. One interesting tidbit is that the game features an undocumented level selection option in some versions. By pressing specific keys, players could start the game from different levels, which was a handy feature for practicing or skipping ahead. Overall, this one's a push. Both the Commodore 64 and the Atari 800XL version of Goonies offers a fantastic gaming experience. Datasoft really nailed it, ensuring the fans of the movie could enjoy a high-quality game no matter which system they had. So again, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Is it a tie, or do you think one of these is better than the other? Again, put your thoughts down in comments. Now, let's shoot for the stars with our next game, Galaxian. Ready to blast off into space, next up we have Galaxian, a classic space shooter that was released in the arcades and later ported to this Commodore 64 and the Atari 800XL. And starting with the Commodore 64 version, the graphics here are a bit of a letdown. The game uses 4-color high-res display and software sprite, which makes the animation appear slow and choppy. And while the SID chip does its best with the sound, the audio experience doesn't fully capture the arcade feel. The gameplay can feel a little bit sluggish due to these graphical limitations, making it less responsive than one might hope. And now let's talk about the Atari 800XL version. Here the graphics are surprisingly colorful and smooth thanks to the use of the hardware sprites. This allowed for a more fluid motion and more visually appealing experience. The sound on the Atari is also quite strong, closely matching the arcade original and adding to the overall immersion. The gameplay is more fluid and responsive, providing a more enjoyable experience that stays true to the arcade roots. And given these differences, I give this round to the Atari 800XL. The better graphics and smoother gameplay makes it just more enjoyable and authentic arcade experience. And while the Commodore 64 version has its merits, the Atari just delivers a more polished game overall. So what do you think? Do you agree with me on this one? What was your favorite? Now, let's dive into the next game, Gyruss. Next up, let's get ready to spiral through space with Gyruss, a beloved arcade shooter that landed on both the Commodore 64 and the Atari. Starting with the Commodore 64 version, the graphics really stand out. The enemy ships are much more detailed compared to the Atari versions, where they can look a little bit more like blobs. The C64 SID chip delivers a robust sound, featuring the iconic soundtrack inspired by Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor. I don't know if I said that right. The music is great on both systems, but the C64 version really captures the essence of the arcade original. The controls on the C64 are another highlight. They're fluid and responsive, allowing for smooth circular movements, which is crucial in this fast-paced game like Gyruss. So now let's move on to the Atari 800XL version. While the graphics are decent, they don't quite match the detail and clarity of the C64. The enemy ships in particular tend to look less defined, and the sound is strong on the Atari thanks to the pokey chip, and it does a good job of replicating the arcade music and sound effects. However, the controls, while solid, don't feel as fluid as the Commodore 64. This can make the gameplay feel less responsive, which is a key factor in such an action-packed shooter. And overall, I give this round to the Commodore 64. Its better graphics, more responsive controls just makes it more enjoyable and more of an authentic arcade experience. And while the Atari version has its merits, the Commodore 64 just delivers a more polished game overall. Again, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Now let's dive into the next game, Gorf. Alright, Space Cadets, let's blast off with Gorf, another classic arcade shooter that found its way onto both of these systems in 1983. And starting with the Commodore 64, the graphics are noticeably better. The ship and Gorf character are well defined and detailed, making the game visually appealing. And one interesting gameplay difference is that when Gorf lays out the enemies at the beginning, you can start shooting them right away on the Commodore 64. This immediate action adds a bit of excitement right off from the start, and the sound is solid on both systems, maintaining that classic arcade feel that makes Gorf feel so memorable. Now over to the Atari 800XL version, while it retains the core elements that makes Gorf fun, the graphics don't quite match the polish of the Commodore 64. The ship and Gorf character are less detailed, which can detract from the visual experience. And additionally on the Atari, you can't start shooting the enemies right away when Gorf lays them out. This slight delay might not seem like much, but it does affect the pacing and the flow of the game. On the sound front, the Atari version holds its own. It delivers an authentic arcade audio sound, but overall, I will give this again to the Commodore 64. The better graphics and the ability to start shooting enemies immediately make for a more engaging and enjoyable gaming experience. So what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you think the Atari's better? Do you think the Commodore's better? Are you going to tell me this version of the Atari was made for the Atari 400, not the 800XL? That's why it was worse. I've heard it all, but y'all let me know down in the comments. Let's move on to the next one. Alright folks, let's dive into Gremlins, another classic movie tie-in that made its way to both the Commodore 64 and the Atari, or it wouldn't be on this list, and it was released in 1984. And the game captures the chaotic fun of the film with two distinctive gameplay modes. And interestingly, this is my first time ever playing this version of Gremlins. As a kid, I only had the sorry text graphics adventure Gremlins on my Commodore 64, and I didn't even know this better one existed. First off, both versions are quite similar in terms of gameplay. You start off by protecting Gizmo from food and water and preventing him from turning into a gremlin. And once the gremlins are unleashed, you switch into action mode where you have to exterminate them. And this dual gameplay keeps things interesting and closely follows the movie plot. In terms of graphics, both systems' versions are pretty comparable. The visuals are colorful and detailed and effectively capture the look and feel of the movie. While the Commodore 64 might have a slight edge in terms of details and color vibrancy, it's nothing significant. Sound-wise, both versions also do a good job. The music and sound effects bring the chaotic gremlin antics to life, and both of the chips deliver a solid audio experience, staying true to the movie's atmosphere. And here's a few interesting tidbits about the game. It was released as a direct tie-in to the 1984 film, capturing key elements of the movie, and the game's level design changes based on the time of day, adding to the challenge. And catching all the mogwais without missing any food or water drops can earn you hidden bonus points. And both versions offer adjustable difficulty levels, catering to both the casual and hardcore gamers. And overall, again, this one's a tie for me. Both systems were fantastic. I really loved this game and I need to play it more, but they're so similar that it was hard for me to choose one way or another. So now you guys tell me, it's your turn to vote. Do you think it was a tie, or do you think one of the systems better than the others? So now let's gear up for our next game, Green Beret. Alright troops, let's dive into Green Beret, also called Russian Attack. And this game tests you on both systems. It was released in 1986, and this side-scrolling action game has you battling through enemy lines with nothing but your trusty knife and quick reflexes. Starting with the Commodore 64 version, graphics are crisp and detailed, giving the game a gritty, realistic feel. The sound's engaging with a soundtrack that amps up the tension as you navigate through the waves of enemies, and the gameplay, while challenging, is smooth and responsive, making it possible to execute those crucial moves and attack with precision. It's tough, no doubt about it, but it's also rewarding when you finally get the hang of it. Now let's talk about the Atari 800XL version. Honestly, this is one of the worst ports I've ever played on the Atari. Controls are atrocious. Trying to kill enemies feel like an exercise in frustration. The game is clunky and unresponsive, making it hard to progress without feeling like you're fighting the controls more than the enemies. The graphics are subpar compared to the Commodore 64, lacking in the detail and the polish, and the sound doesn't fare much better, failing to capture the intensity of the original arcade experience. And overall, this round clearly goes to the Commodore 64. The graphics, the sound, the gameplay blow the Atari 800XL out of the water. If you're looking to play Green Beret, the Commodore 64 is the way to go. Put your comments down below. I'm always willing to hear what you have to say. So now let's delve into a dungeon crawler classic with our next game, Gateway to Apshai. Next up, let's step into the ancient dungeons of Gateway to Apshai, a game that brought early action RPG elements to both systems, and it was released in 1983. And this game has you exploring treacherous dungeons, fighting monsters, and uncovering treasures. Gateway to Apshai was one of the first original games I ever got for my Commodore 64, and after playing it on both systems, I have to say that it's a tough call. Both versions deliver an equally enjoyable experience across all three categories: graphics, sound, and gameplay. In terms of graphics, both systems versions are quite similar. The visuals are basic but effective, capturing that dungeon's dark and mysterious atmosphere. The character and monster sprites are simple yet recognizable, making it easy to immerse yourself into the game world. Sound-wise, both versions do a great job of setting the mood. The sound effects are basic but functional and provides that necessary audio cue as you navigate through the dungeons and battle enemies. And neither version stands out significantly in this category. Both deliver what you need for an engaging experience. And as for gameplay, both systems are smooth, responsive controls. The game mechanics are straightforward, making it easy just to pick up and play. And whether you're fighting off monsters or searching for hidden treasures, the gameplay feels consistent and enjoyable on both systems, as long as you learn what F keys you need to hit to change into fighting mode or change into whatever mode you need or get the keys. But overall, again, I give this one a tie. Both systems are excellent. They offer a fantastic and nostalgic gaming experience, and it's hard for me just to pick a favorite because they're just so equal. So, did you like one better than the other? Now it's your turn to tell me your thoughts. So now let's dive into that fast-paced shooter with our next game, Gridrunner. Alright, let's get ready for some high-speed action with Gridrunner. Fast-paced shooter that electrified both the Commodore 64 and the Atari. Again, released in 1983, this game is all about quick reflexes and strategic shooting as you navigate through grids filled with relentless enemies. And Gridrunner was a standout title for both systems, and after playing it on both, I have to say it's another tough call. Both versions offer a thrilling experience, and it's hard to pick a clear winner, and here's why. The graphics on both systems are nearly identical, the visuals are sharp and colorful, capturing the intense and futuristic vibe of the game, and whether you're dodging enemy fire or lining up your shots, the graphics do a great job of keeping you engaged. And when it comes to sound, both versions deliver a solid auditory experience. The sound effects are crisp and enhance the frantic pace of the game, and the background music keeps the adrenaline pumping, making each moment feel intense and action-packed. And gameplay-wise, both versions shine again. Controls are smooth, responsive on both systems, and the gameplay is fast and challenging, demanding quick reflexes and precise shooting. So whether you're playing on the Commodore or the Atari, Gridrunner offers a consistently exhilarating experience. And to make this more interesting, here's a fun fact. Gridrunner was developed by Jeff Minter, a legendary figure in the gaming industry for his unique and often psychedelic game designs. And his signature style is evident in Gridrunner's fast-paced action and visual striking graphics. And overall, I call this one a tie again. Both systems' versions of Gridrunners provide an equally thrilling ride. It's one of those games where you can't really go wrong on whatever system you're playing on. So, last one, what do you think on it? Put it down in the comments.
Well, that was epic, my friends. I'm glad you joined me and checked out all these games side by side. Now you gotta tell me, Commodore or Atari? Put it down in the comments and let me know which games you think were better. And if you haven't checked out the other videos from the letter A through F, of the Commodore vs. Atari series, go check those out now.